Hey, welcome to the All of You podcast.
We're your hosts. I'm Siobhan Roy.
And I'm Dave Martinell.
Our relationship hasn't always been easy, especially in the beginning. We were getting in the worst conflicts that sent us down a path of deep healing and inner work in order to get the relationship that we wanted.
So whether you're on your own healing journey or just looking to improve your relationships overall, we hope that by sharing our lessons and struggles, we help you along your way.
And with that, welcome to the podcast where we accept all of you. Well, this is the podcast I really don't feel like recording today.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
Because we are planning on talking about a little bit of politics, and mostly through the lens of relationships and triggers, but politics are so triggering, and I know without a shadow of a doubt I'm probably going to trigger someone on this episode. And
Can I sit there for a second?
yeah.
What hurts so bad about triggering someone? Like,
Well,
what is that?
That's actually what I was just about to say, is the people pleaser in me I hate people not liking me. And I know that it's not in reality to think that everyone will like me, but it's still hard, feels uncomfy for me. But I believe in my mission more than I do people liking me. So I'm here, I'm mic'd up, I'm ready to go. But dang, I know this is I'm just coming right out the gate saying this is a hard one for me.
Yeah, it's hard for me too. And in full transparency, we tried to record this yesterday, and then I started to edit it and just didn't feel like we had the right conversation around it or the right heart. And I posted a reel on, some political comment on the political landscape, but it was more about the relationship side of things. And already it triggered someone. Like, someone got full blown upset, and that was enlightening to me, which I think was helpful. Maybe the reel was insensitive. Maybe it felt like, I don't know. They definitely got triggered. So it's hard to take their opinion as something it's hard to know what was being mirrored back to me because they were in such a triggered state in the comment. Clearly somebody that doesn't want to associate with anyone who voted for Trump, which we're not here to say who we voted for. And I'll be honest, I'm right in the middle. Like it's not like, I'm not here to advocate for my political stance. That's not the point of this podcast. And so I don't really see this as a political episode as much as a conversation around relationships and triggers, which is right up our alley.
That I can speak to.
So I think but the reality is that there's a lot of people in our country right now that are triggered, and like massively triggered. I've seen it, but not everyone. Not everyone. Not even everyone on the Democratic side, I would say, is triggered. Just the people. There's a lot of people voicing their opinions on social media, and this is the first time that I've ever been in the social media world, because we're not even a year old in this podcast, and before that I was a private Instagram account with only photos of my daughters. Like, I was not active on social media very much before this podcast, and now we're in it and we're starting to see a broader landscape of the world. I was kind of in a bubble before, and it's hard. It's hard to see. It's hard to see how many people are so upset. And I think I want to hold space I'm not, this isn't also a podcast where I want to just come down on those people and be like, you're triggered and you need to heal. I don't think that's the right attitude either. I see this very much like, if you were triggered and I'm your partner, how do I help you? How do I love you? And for anyone triggered on either side of politics, the question that I want to ask is like, how do we love each other still?
Yeah, that's a great question. Before we jump there, I think there's a piece that's really important, and that is, how do I know if I'm just upset or if I'm triggered? Because I truly believe those who voted for Harris should be upset. That's so valid. Like, it is absolutely a bummer when your candidate loses and the things that you were hoping were going to come to fruition in the next 4 years, you feel like aren't. And so it is absolutely valid to be sad, to grieve a little bit, grieve as much as you need to when your candidate
Even in your
loses.
group texts with your friends, cut loose a little bit, let it out.
Totally normal.
Yeah.
I think when we talk about being triggered, that is when it is, you're not just upset and sad and you're grieving, you are level 10 outraged. You are catastrophizing. You are projecting things. I'm
You're
talking about
causing pain on others.
others. Yeah. I'm talking about people who are like, America's doomed, it's going to hell in a handbasket. I'm not going to be okay. That it's
Well, and let's stop there for a second. We don't have to go slowly through this, because even I'm thinking of anyone listening to this that, you know, is afraid of rights being taken away from them. Like, they legitimately have that fear. Then they are, they feel like they're not going to be okay. And that's the hard part of this conversation, is holding space for that and saying, like, if you feel like you're not going to be okay, if you feel like the world is over as you know it, I I, I don't think there's room for a conversation when you're feeling that way. Like, if you are feeling that way, that, I mean, maybe stop this podcast and don't listen to podcasts for a minute. Would be my advice. Not that you're asking, but I feel like if somebody doesn't feel like the world is going to be okay, and you are in that level of state of mind where you feel like we're doomed, that's a terrible, like, place to be, and I'm sorry for you feeling that way. And I think the only way out of that, it's like this: when you're triggered, when you're in a state of fear like that, and you feel like the world is over, I'm doomed, you have to kind of just get back to the basics of what you need: drink water, eat food, rest, ease your mind, and then kind of slowly come back to reality. I mean, we've come from a lot. Like, and I don't even like giving reality checks to somebody who's in that state like this soon. So hopefully they've turned off the podcast. But like, if somebody's that level of triggered, once they're well slept, and maybe this will come out a week later, so it won't be as triggering. But once you've taken care of yourself for a minute and you're sleeping well, then you wake up, and then I go, hey, the reminder is that, like, there's a lot of people who didn't have rights in this country and in history that now do. Like, there's always an evolving thing. So anything that you feel like might get taken away from you, might you might lose in some way. Like, one, wait till you've lost it to get that level of upset. Like, it's not helpful for you if you're that level of upset. So wait for the outcome. Don't catastrophize. Don't assume and make assumptions yet. It's not time for that. And if you are, and another reality check is that in a good state of mind, you can have healthy conversations that move needle for whatever you're advocating for on either side.
Yeah, there is one piece in what you were saying that kind of came to mind for me. And it's that reminder that if you are in that state where you think you're unsafe, it's because your body feels unsafe. But just because your body feels unsafe doesn't mean you are unsafe. And learning to separate that has been really helpful for me to going, yes, bad things can happen, but they aren't happening. And in this moment, I'm still safe. And that's a tool to bring you back into reality of, yeah, my body feels unsafe, but I actually am. Nothing's changed yet. And I think that is a really helpful reality check, but just also a way to learn that our feelings are not always right. And when they feel so big and so overwhelming, it's so hard to not listen to them and to not really, when your body is in such a state of fear, it's hard to think that you're safe. But the reality is, if you can try to get in, if you want to try to get into reality, there is a way to do that. And it is to go within and say, in this moment, I am safe. In this moment, I'm in my living room. In this moment, Biden is still the president. In this moment, I have loved ones who I can call if I need them. Like, allow your body to feel that safety, and that will help you to get into reality and not feel those heavy feelings of sadness and overwhelm.
Yeah. I don't see this any different. What we classify things as a political issue, depending on, I don't know, a bunch of different reasons, but really this is like anything in life to me. If you have strong emotions that when a subject is brought up, it's triggering a high emotionally charged conversation, and then therefore you're not going to be fruitful. You're not going to be able to handle it well until you've calmed down and processed it. And I think because people are getting in so many political arguments, they're almost getting in this like toxic relationship with political arguments. It kind of, I would venture to say similar to like the beginning of our relationship when we would have this discord and view things differently, and we almost became like addictive to this pattern of like we don't want to talk about what we do, and when we do it blows up, and then we come back to each other. It's just not healthy, and it wasn't safe for us. So as we've learned in our relationship how to overcome conflict, it's about taking space. It's about taking time to process these things. But you have to be willing to look at your own triggers. And that's where I don't think with political stances, there's so much political ideology and identity politics that it's really an identity issue, and it's a really personal thing for a lot of people because you're talking about rights. I mean, for a long time it was about, the rights of people who were literally slaves, or women who couldn't vote and buy homes, and like your well-being, your life is on the line. And so this is like life or death to them. And so I don't want to be insensitive to that, and I think that that's what I learned from even posting one thing about it was, holy crap, I don't know what I'm messing with here. Like that there is I didn't, and this is just kind of feel bad, but I guess it is my white privilege. I guess it is my male privilege that it's not life or death for me a lot of times, because I whether Trump is president or Harris is president, I'm not looking at any right as a straight white male. I'm not really looking at it through that lens, you know? And there's a lot of people who are worried and fearful for their life. And I don't want to be insensitive to those people. I just don't know what to do. Like flat out, like I don't know how to love. I wish I could love them better, but when you're in a really triggered state, the best way I can love you is to walk away. Like I leave you to deal with you until you come back to reality, because um I don't know how to help you in that moment. So unless somebody's coming to me to help me, to have me coach them through it, or they're literally wanting to do the work, I don't know how to help them with their political identity, and there's almost no point in having the conversation, I guess, is what I'm realizing. And I'm kind of coming to that realization right now, this second.
Well, and I think that's not not just those that are upset um because Harris lost. I would say that's also true for if you disagree on subjects like with your family, and whether that's like a certain policy or candidate, whatever it is. If someone gets triggered, can you can you have a helpful conversation?
No.
No, because someone's not in reality.
Yeah.
And that's wherever you stand, like whatever your view is politically, whoever you're talking to, if you or the other person, if someone is triggered, I don't believe you can have a fruitful conversation.
Well, and that's where our expertise is. So let's get into
Yeah.
that. Because the politics side is not my expertise, and I honestly had no idea what I was even asking for by posting that post. Um, but we do know a lot about triggers, and we do know how to recognize when somebody's triggered, and we do know how to recognize a lot of the time when we're triggered, and we've done a lot of work in this area. So
Yeah.
let's go.
And I think that why I think this is an important conversation is, even for myself, if I get triggered in a political conversation with someone, I cannot see them
Mm-hmm.
any longer, because when you're triggered, you go back into your childhood wound, to the age you were when that wound happened, and that is what comes out of you. And so it that can look like defensiveness, that can look like I'm not going to talk to you anymore, that can look like
I saw somebody say, if you vote for Trump, I hate you. I hate you if you voted for Trump. And I just saw pain on this guy's face. And I went, whoa, this is more real than I realized. I actually went in to the TikTok world of people who are really upset, to try to see them, like to try to feel their pain a little bit, and it hurt. It was hard, but I wanted to see what was going on.
yeah, and there's so many reasons why people are triggered by it.
So what do you do if you feel really justified in your trigger? Because sometimes, like, and I keep relating this to me and you, because I just think triggers are all the same, whether it's at school or at work with your boss, or in a relationship, or you're having a political discussion. Like, it's all kind of that same emotional experience that's happening in the physical body. You're having chemicals being released, and there's expressions, like you're seeing red. You kind of go to this place where you're no longer in your logical self, and you're kind of wounded. And so what happens when someone is triggered for a justified reason? Like, let's say I got in a somebody rear-ended me on the freeway, and I get out of the car. They were texting and driving. They rear-ended me, and let's say pretend I have a nice car, which I don't, but let's say it's your car. Like uh and I blow up on them, very triggered. That's, I think, where a lot of people feel is like they're justified in it, you know?
You are justified in being upset, but I don't I don't know if I'm I don't know if I hold the belief that you're ever justified in attacking someone else.
Mm,
And I think my personal value is to not allow my not to fling my pain on others.
mm,
I don't I try my very hardest, and I do not do this perfectly, but to not allow my pain to leak onto everyone else. And I think that's a lot of the times what happens with triggers. And it's like, yeah, I'm justified to be in pain. I'm justified to be upset. I'm justified to be hurt. I'm justified in my grief. I'm justified in my feelings. But when I weaponize them to hurt others, that for me is when it crosses a, and that's a personal belief and a personal line.
well, not everyone, I think, understands when they're doing that or not, you know? if if I'm telling someone I hate them, I'm being cruel. I'm being like that. There's just, I don't understand. There's no, I could never have a justification for telling someone I hate them, because if I'm telling them I hate them, I'm just trying to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other way around it. I'm just trying to hurt them. So, like, I think you're exactly right. And like, I never want to hurt anyone. Uh, Self protection, I guess. There is reasons to hurt someone, I guess, but for the most part, that's the flinging of pain, like you're talking about. And so, if somebody rear ends my car, what's the just reaction? Is to silently like boundary them, or or just be upset. I'm allowed to be
But
upset.
I think it's totally valid to say, "Hey man, you rear-ending my car is devastating for me because I need this to take my kids to school and it's going to have X, Y, and Z impact on me. Really hurts, bro. Like, that wasn't cool." That's not necessarily like being like, I hate you.
Yeah.
That's like, hey, I'm just telling you what you did hurt me.
So if you're a person who's really upset at at the election and the results, what's the correct response?
So I don't think there is one correct response because everyone is upset for different reasons because you vote
They're
off of
hurt for
your
different reasons.
personal choice. Like why I voted for the candidate I did might be different than why you voted for the candidate, but it was the same candidate, right?
Yeah.
So everyone's going to have a different reason why they're upset. I think where I think it's valid to express, I think it's valid to express how you feel, but not valid to spread more hate. And
Hmm.
not that it's not valid. That's where I think I'd like to advocate that we don't,
It's their
because
right,
I
but it's
think you're allowed to,
yeah.
like First Amendment. Thankful that we can say whatever you can say whatever you want to say, but is it helpful?
Hmm.
I don't think so. I don't think saying I hate someone who voted differently from me is going to help change them to vote your way next time. And I would actually argue that it's not helpful for you. What is like what is a way that you can articulate it is saying how you feel. I feel like people that voted for Trump don't align with my views on X, Y, and Z. And that's hurtful to me because this is why it's really personal to me. Like, I can get that. I can get behind that. I can understand. Like, when you talk about how you feel,
You're making an I statement.
you're making an I statement. I can get behind that. But like the statements, I can't. I think that it's the same as our relationship where when I go like, you don't even love me, like I'm triggered.
Yeah.
One, it's not true. Like, two, it's not helpful.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same
You
thing
don't,
is
you
like,
may not feel loved in that moment by something I did.
yes. And I think that's where people are, when people identify with their political party and that party's policies or that candidate, and they identify so much, it's like their identity is in Harris. And then she loses, it's like a personal attack. And that's where that trigger comes out. And it's like anyone who didn't vote for Harris is saying that they don't support me and
Mm-hmm.
therefore we can't be friends. And
Yeah.
I and
That's a
that
tough route to go.
and then you're hurting yourself doing that.
You're further isolating yourself from people who love you, but don't agree with you politically, maybe. But yeah, it's the one thing that I want to, keep saying is that it is complicated. Like it is, we're talking about people's rights and their very, very, very strong feelings of freedom and safety. And so when people feel that threatened, they go to some pretty dark places, and I think we're seeing that. And that's why we're even sitting here a little scared to have this combo. Like it's scary because of how upset people are and how triggered people are. And yet in our, what we feel like is our calling is to speak to the relationship side and to speak to the psychological part of it.
Yeah, and I think here's what I'll say that I know people are going to hate, and I'm just going to say it because it is what I believe to be true. I think there is so much value in having relationships with people that their perspective is different than yours. And that's something I will always have in my life. I will be friends with people as long as they want to be friends with me that see things differently than me, vote differently than me, raise their kids different than me, because I don't believe I have it all figured out. I don't believe all of my political views are 100% correct. I'm actually open to hearing how they might not be. And that openness that I have, and this is not to like toot my own horn, but the openness that I have that my perspective could be wrong is why I've voted in the past. I've voted Democrat and I've voted Republican. I've totally swayed. I have completely changed my opinion, my political views multiple times. And some people might say like that's super wishy-washy, and I just don't see it that way. I see it as I'm open to change, I'm open to evolving, and I'm open to being wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's allowed me to, I feel like, explore what really might actually be true and helps me to get closer to it. But when we get so triggered that we can't see someone else's perspective, we cut ourselves off from learning, from growing, from evolving. And
We cut ourselves off from authentic relationships too, because
bingo.
because if I'm going to be in a relationship with someone based on the fact that they agree with me politically, then what if they change their political views? I cut them off immediately, and therefore I'm that means that my relationships are conditional on people not changing. And that's just not how I want to that's not my value. My value is freedom and people to explore different things in their viewpoints, barring hurting anyone. And that's where I think people are justified. That's where they're justifying in this trigger of saying, if you voted for Trump, you hurt people. Like, but you're like they're saying basically you are, what is it, by affiliation. Like you're a
Guilty by
bad person
affiliation.
by affiliation because you voted for them. You're part of the problem. And
Well, and I think there's a lot of complexities that we could explore within that in itself of, but I actually want to, before going into that, I want to circle back to that part you said about authenticity, because I think that's so critical. I have people in my life that, if they knew my political views were different than them, would not want to be friends with me. So I either need to be honest with this person and never be friends with them again, or I just have to show up inauthentically and hide my true self from them. And maybe the right move is to truly just let go, because they're of the belief that, like, if we don't align in something, we can't be friends. But I think even for friends where you can feel energetically that if you disagree, they won't approve of you. When I feel that, I hide. I hide my true self. And that's something I know I personally have to work on. I have to be okay just being who I am and letting people let go of me if they disagree with me. But I just find it really sad. And I think, one, because either you're having to choose from letting go of a friendship or being inauthentic, but two, I think it's sad to not hold space for people of different beliefs, because then you're living in an echo chamber and you're not going to evolve. And society needs to evolve. We need new ideas. We need to keep growing. We need new concepts. So I don't know. That's my little soapbox.
you're right. It's just for the people who are really stuck in their trigger or in their, like, what is happening psychologically to someone when they are so politically enraged. I'm not saying that you're wrong for that. Like, I'm not saying that that's not normal. I think that's actually quite normal. If you feel threatened and you feel like your rights are going away, and I think it allows us to have compassion on anyone in that state, because I could be in that state next election. I could be in that state a month from now or a week from now if I see a bill or something that looks like it's going to hurt me in some way, I could get really triggered. And I believe most anxiety and mental illness comes from fighting reality. And when you first hear really bad news that you don't agree with or you don't want to accept, like if you first hear about something really bad happening, what feeling happens in your body? You clench up. You kind of want to fight the reality. Like you don't want to accept that this thing has happened. It's this sudden enraged feeling of fighting the reality. And then as you, in the coming weeks, you integrate the experience and you're like, yeah, this happened. Like it kind of, you go through this grieving process of acceptance. But ultimately, mental health revolves around, and anyone who's grieved anything has to realize, like, eventually you have to come to acceptance. Even if the country votes a different way than you prefer, even if you get rights taken away, even if I got thrown in jail for a crime I didn't commit, for the next 10 years, let's say, like tomorrow I'm in jail for a crime I didn't commit, what's my best option? To enrage and stay angry, or radically accept it and try to have internal peace in here, still fight it, still do the thing. I think this is like what Martin Luther King would say, you know? Yes, still fight against the power, but keep your peace. Like you losing your peace and losing self-control doesn't help your situation ever. And so get to a state of calm, get to a state of peace. And then, yes, like if I was in jail for a crime I didn't commit, I would spend a lot of time trying to fight against that for sure. Like I still have to keep my peace in here. Like you have to live your life and your path. And if you stay fighting against reality so long, you're just causing yourself more harm, I think. Which it like depending on people's state of mind, they may not want to hear that either.
Oh, 100%. There's people that are like throwing tomatoes at you right now, already ended the podcast, but we we knew that was going to happen.
We wanted to try to tackle the discussion anyway because
yeah.
it's important, and there's just so many. I think it was on our heart,
Well, yeah, sorry to cut you off. I think, is it okay if I
Yeah.
get over you? So I think where we can draw some parallels is early in our relationship, you were the left and I was the right when we would get triggered. Like and not speaking politically.
Yeah.
It was literally like
we're on two sides of the spectrum.
Like, you don't even love me, you don't care about me, like you this and that. And the triggers we would have would stop us from being able to see the other person's perspective. And 9 times out of 10, when I was triggered, 10 times out of 10, I was not seeking to understand where you were coming from. I was trying to be validated in my pain.
Mm-hmm.
And in learning to try to see your perspective, it was so helpful for our relationship because I'm not always right. Most of the time when I'm triggered, I'm not right. And I don't mean that like if you're triggered politically that your political view is wrong. I more say it in the means of like the reaction and how you're managing it, and the way it's coming out was always wrong. And that was for me when we were fighting. So I think like that's a lot of the dots we're connecting, is until you go inward and start healing your wounds where the triggers are coming from so that you can react in a better way, that's when you can start having conversations with someone who disagrees with you, and it isn't a bomb explosion. It was for us it was a bomb explosion every time we disagreed on something for a while. And I had to learn every time I got triggered of, oh, I'm triggered. I need to go regulate myself, get back into reality before we can continue having the conversation. When I'd get in reality and then we'd come back to the conversation, I seek to understand your perspective. Even if I didn't necessarily agree with it, I could see where you were coming from and see that it wasn't because you hated me or you didn't love me or whatever I was projecting. It was that you had a different lens in which you see things through and you act differently because of that. And I think that that's what I would say about this, like this conflict that I keep seeing a lot of on social media of like each side villainizing the other side, is I think truly if I sat down with someone whose views were absolutely opposite of mine, and I could ask them questions about how were you raised? Where did you grow up? What was like the societal norms there? how did that impact you? And what are some of the experiences that were really formative to you and made a big impact on your life? And then they told me how that influenced how they voted. I would go, yeah, that makes so much sense that you voted that way.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I agree with how you voted, but it makes sense why you voted that way. But we don't, but I think that's what's missing is that seeking to understand. I don't think I truly just don't believe either side is evil. I think there are some evil people on both sides for sure that
Yeah.
have very extremist views, but I don't think that's the majority.
No.
I think the majority want a healthy America with a good economy and great education system. And I think has good values. I think the majority of people do, but the route to get there, we don't agree on. And because of that, we're just like throwing anger and mud at each other. And it's not necessary if you could have a cup of tea and talk to someone about how they arrived at the views that they have. You can see that they're not an evil, bad person. They just have different life experiences, and their current life circumstances is what's leading them to vote in the way that they did.
Yeah. And I think that where our current state is, there's so many people who are on the far left and far right that I think are like in the middle of a divorce. Like, I'm done with you. And the hard thing is that unless people are moving out of the country, we are married to each other. We're we don't get to, I mean, unless you're moving out, you're in a divorce with somebody you're living with. And that's hell to me. That's worse. Like, if we divided the country in half and said these people live here and these people live here and keep your peace, then okay, people can heal and start to live differently, and and then they could change their mind and move to the other side if they want to or whatever. But since we're not doing that, I don't think we are married to each other, for better or worse. And we need to figure out a way to understand each other and have the conversations. And the only way that I see that being possible is if we heal the wounds. We have to heal. We have to heal. I could not have political conversations in my younger days. I probably would still have gotten triggered up until a few years ago. It's not until right now that I feel like I could really sit with someone who disagrees with me and not get triggered. And I still might struggle. There might be some hot topics in there that could cause me to activate. But I believe that I'm the furthest along I've ever been to being able to sit and hold space in a conversation without personalizing it and getting emotionally charged and taking over the conversation or insulting them or overreacting in some way. Because what people don't realize is that when you do that, when you're in a conversation with someone and you don't like what they're saying and you say you're dumb, the conversation's over. Like, if I'm in a conversation with someone and we're having a very cordial conversation around one of these hot topics, and all of a sudden they get triggered and say I'm dumb, we're done. Like, I'm sorry, I don't participate. Like, did you just call me dumb? Like, what are we in third grade? And when you
But that's
say
the
things like
angry inner
that,
child triggered coming out.
yeah, when you say things like that, when you activate and you get so frustrated, but people don't realize when they get triggered. And I'm speaking for myself. Like, I didn't realize when my blood activated to that level before, because it happened so often throughout the day. It was just normal. And I didn't want to believe that I was becoming illogical. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm always logical. I'm always logical no matter how I'm feeling. I will be the first one to tell you, if I'm feeling really big feelings of emotions, I'm not logical. It's different sides of my brain happening. And if I'm emotionally charged, I become illogical. When I was driving in a race car track with my daughter for her birthday and some teenage boy rammed her car, I became illogical and I wanted to beat up a little boy. Like, I didn't, but I did get triggered and I didn't handle myself the best. I was frustrated and I almost ruined her birthday because I got so triggered at some teenage boy. Like, I that's not okay. And if we want to have productive conversations, we have to be able to stay regulated inside the conversation. And if you have a lot of political triggers, you're not going to be able to stay regulated. And therefore, you're not really going to be able to help the thing you're trying to help. The best way to help it is to stay regulated, stay calm, and try to help the other side understand you. I'm sorry that you have to do that. I'm sorry that you have to teach people who don't know. And if they get dysregulated, you have to end the conversation too, because it's not going to be fruitful. Two dysregulated people are going to be like two 7-year-olds trying to have a political conversation. You ever seen that? Doesn't go well. Watch the debates. It's kind of like that. Man, it's tricky.
It's super tricky.
Even this conversation, I feel tiptoeing for all the hearts and minds of people that could be listening. And I want to have compassion on everyone for how everyone's feeling. But I also want to say, like, I'm strongly advocating that we can start to talk about this stuff in a healthy way.
Yeah. And I also think that if you're feeling these big feelings of hatred and fear, that's actually just not good for your body.
No.
And this is like kind of a wild tangent and a side note, but it can, like, lingering and keeping those feelings in your body and not releasing them can cause disease. And that's like from Body Keeps the Score. There's a ton of science backing this. And so finding ways to heal so that you can release holding on to the resentment you feel from those that have different views than you, or the fear that you feel in what's going on in the world right now, or the anger that you have, like being able to release those and harbor safety within you is actually going to help you mentally, emotionally, physically. And I think that's a lot of the importance of why to work through political triggers or any triggers, is because holding on to those really negative feelings is harmful for you.
Yeah, but I mean, you remember what it's like holding on to some of these deep core beliefs. Like when we did the core belief episode, I mean, that would be a good one probably to listen to right now if you are struggling with it. When you're holding on to some of these deep seated core beliefs, it is like drinking the poison and hoping somebody else is going to die. I mean, you're holding on to this resentment, you're holding on to this justification. What the whole reason I brought up the me going to prison analogy, which is, I know, pretty extreme, but even if I'm in prison, the best thing for me is to do a bunch of push-ups all day and read a bunch of books and protect my mind. Me sitting there angry all day is going to destroy me. I'll get suicidal thoughts, I'll get depressed, I'll get anxious, and I might not make it out if I'm in, but like no matter what your circumstances are, the best thing for you is to keep a mentally healthy position and stay regulated. Still fight against the thing, but losing your own mind, you're not going to be able to help anyone.
Right. And I think that also speaks to the oldest tool in the book: control what you can control. And that can look like volunteering at a local level. That can look like loving your children well and raising your kids with great values. Control the things that you have actual control over and release the rest.
Yeah, if the election is causing you to lose your mental health, I'm really sorry, and I just the, it's not good for you, and I hate that. I hate that. That's the way it works, you know, is people who are oppressed, like if you're in an abusive relationship and you're stuck because you married someone who's abusive, you then have to heal. Say you get out of that relationship and you have triggers and trauma from that abusive relationship. You still have to heal. So you're not only had to deal with the abuse, but now you also have to heal the wounds and go through all the therapy and all the work to get back to being the best version of you. And that's just the way that it works. They're not going to do the work for you. The abuser might apologize. Even if the abuser completely changes and apologizes, they still can't heal your triggers. You still have to heal your triggers, no matter what. It's just the way it works. That's why it's important for us to not cause abuse. But even if you feel abused or threatened or whatever you feel, you always have to do the work to get yourself back to a healthy state of mind, no matter what the circumstances are. Through all things, like a peace that surpasses all understanding. It's really difficult to let go of. It's not fair, it's not justified, but it's the task. It's the only way to regain your mental health. And it's the only way you'll ever help somebody else is if you get to a mentally healthy place. Because when you're not mentally healthy, no, you can't help anyone. I learned that the hard way.
Ain't that the truth?
Love you.
I love you too. And I love all of you. I am just holding space for those that are hurting and just take care of yourself. Sending you so much love.
Yeah. And for those that are happy with the results of the election, be gracious and realize that people are triggered and that's why they're reacting the way they are. Not because it means anything. They're not actually, like when you get really triggered, the best thing
It
for me
doesn't
to
mean you
do,
did anything wrong.
and it also, the best thing for me to do is not take your reaction personally. If you overreact like crazy and then I get really triggered at your triggered response, we're just in a toxic cycle now. I let you lash out, do whatever you want to do, and I turn the other cheek because I'm always accountable for my actions and the way that I treat people. And if this offended anyone, I'm really sorry. We just tried our best to have the conversation because we felt like it was important. Reach out. We're happy to talk. Love
Love
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.